blame him for me being here, but it's been wonderful. And I came the same year my children were born, and my son is now a 10th grader, which shocks some of the students who come back and see him now so huge, taller than me. Yeah, it's just been amazing. So
wonderful.
well, there will be an opportunity for people to share, and so you're comfortable sharing. It's I'm curious to hear people's thoughts about their experiences here. Yeah, we will be recording, that's for sure, to be able to share it with others who are not here tonight. So we'll remind people of that as well. The school did you attend last Thursday?
No,
Okay.
no, I wasn't able to.
So the campus
we are recording the session, so they are available.
Oh, good, good.
For if you're interested in seeing any of the past, or there are a few ahead of us too. So if you can't make those, you can see the recordings.
I was considering doing the poetry, the two poetries, but I'm actually doing an online poetry course right now, so I'm booked.
I dare say, was Marilyn, I'm trying to remember when her first year was.
No, she's after my time.
Okay.
No.
I mean, Marilyn was here. She was here my whole, no, she had to have been here at least 2 decades, right?
Yeah, I think she was 21 years.
21 years? Okay. Yes.
Well, I go back to the Mary Helen Bickley years.
Okay. Yeah.
So
we've heard the name for the awards that was in her honor. Which is wonderful, that's for sure. Actually, and there's a program in honor of Mary Lynn this year that will be coming.
Mary Helen Bickley.
No, but I'm sorry, Mary Lynn Ellis, the one that one of the 2 former faculty members who's leading the poetry discussion.
Okay.
So the other is Jenny Burkholder-Flack. Jenny B is a wonderful teacher. Both have recently left AFS, but so if you have a chance to watch it later, I highly recommend it. That's for sure. Imagine the campus has changed a little since '76.
Well, it certainly has. I haven't been back in a number of years, and I want to get back. I'm in Nova Scotia now, so it's a little bit more difficult. Particularly with the border. I haven't crossed the border in 2 years, over 2 years. But I would love to come back and see what's changed and what's been lost. My great grandmother's library has been replaced. She was the Taylor Library that was, I'm sure, is much larger now.
Yes, our library is significant and a centerpiece as you come on campus. It was constructed right before I arrived, so I hear tales of what the construction was like, and the library is fabulous. Well
worth coming back to see everything.
Yes. All right, so more people join us, and certainly people can, if they want to share a video, they can, but they certainly don't have to. And we're going to wait till about 7:05 to start. And we have people who registered, so we have a sense of how many people might show up, and then we obviously will have people arrive for the first without as well. I am going to share at different times in the chat the link to the Google Slides presentation that I'll be sharing with you all tonight, and it finishes with my email address. So if I know we have an ending point, but if you ever want to talk more, I'd be happy to continue the conversation. So let's see here. I have to say, I'm curious, waiting to see if any of my former students appear and have at me. Aha. So one of the people appearing now is my daughter, but she's really signing my mother on. My mother was a many-decade educator at Delaware County Community College. So it's now retired, and it's wonderful to have her join. She's in our children's lives and also gets to see me tonight. So. Right. I don't think any former students yet. I have to say, I always love people's different images and icons and things like that.
We also have alumni parents joining us too, and current parents. So it'll be a
Perfect.
mix. Mhm.
Sure. All right. Good evening to all those joining. So Lisa will do our best. I will start sharing a screen at some point, and Lisa's going to moderate the chat. But people are always welcome at different times to unmute their mic and share. There'll be some videos. Fingers crossed, when I press play, it works without a 1-minute ad for a wonder drug or insurance company or travel spot. Who knows? We'll find out. And the Google slide presentation also has some terrific links to other organizations and people that have been helpful. So if you've never heard of Making Gay History by Eric Marcus, it's a terrific podcast that I've used a number of times. So you're always welcome to check that out as well while we wait. So we'll start in just a couple more minutes. So it seems like possibly mostly parents or some other alumni.
Yeah, I think at the moment, mostly alumni parents, I think.
Wonderful.
Well, just for clarification, I have 2 alumni, Paige and Maya, but I also have a current student, Nathan.
Okay.
I hope Paige and Maya are doing well.
They are, thank you.
Very good.
And Drew, both of my daughters, Sarah and Rachel Adler, loved their classes with you. Do you know, Rachel is a law student. If you could believe that. And Sarah works for the SEC. I mean,
Okay.
like they grew up. But they both say hello. I'm actually curious. They might join if they can.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But I have fond memories of them in the classroom. That's
Yeah.
for sure. What year law
Yeah,
school?
no. Rachel's in her 2nd year. Can you believe that?
Does she know what
It's really.
kind of law she wants to focus on?
I think I should probably let her say that. Different things interest her at different times.
Okay.
But I'm very proud of her. She got a job for this coming summer with a law firm that actually was in front of the Supreme Court with the gay marriage case there. And I'm just very proud of her. I think that's a great place for her.
Terrific. Well, please do tell her to reach out because
I will. They might show up.
to be honest, a lot of my Twitter feed is me asking people if they'd be willing to speak to high school students, which most get rejected or ignored, but many of them, when I say, would you like to speak to high school students, they respond. And I have been fortunate to be able to bring people into the classroom, as you're going to hear tonight. And so I'm always interested in connecting. Obviously, AFS Connect with Lisa in the alumni office will be more of that, but I've put out a plea on that as well to ask people if they know people. I also teach a politics course, so that's always been helpful. I've
Oh,
gotten
wow.
wonderful connections that way. So Lisa,
I will let them know.
oh yes, please, thank you.
I will.
What do you think, Lisa? Shall we begin?
Yeah, I think it's good to get started, and if folks show up in the waiting room, I can let them in then in the middle. So I think
Okay.
it's good to go.
Let's see here. And I know, so Lisa will continue to moderate that, and I'll share my screen and begin. That's for sure. See here. So just a reminder that AFS is recording the Zoom for people who cannot attend live tonight. If you wish to share, you can do so by voice, raise your hand, or signal, or text. You can type your comment in the chat. When I share my screen, I can't see it. So Lisa will help moderate that as best we can. And you're certainly welcome to read each other's chats that way too. And so this is the course, the evening tonight, Gender and Sexual Diversity in and Out of the Classroom. So what we'll do tonight, my name is Drew Benfer. I teach in the history department at Abington Friends School. This is my 17th year. I'm also a parent. My son, Cameron, is in 10th grade. And I've coached soccer different ways here at AFS, served as grade deans. Currently, I'm with the senior class and the class of 2022. And I have a wonderful group of advisees who will be finishing up. And Lisa, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself just in case.
Sorry, just unmute myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Budd. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement, and we're just thrilled to be able to offer these Zoom sessions and sort of give a window into the AFS classroom in 2022. So glad you all are here to join us tonight and excited to hear Drew's presentation.
So as you can see, I'll share a few reflections on the two courses in the history department. The first one is called Gender and Sexual Diversity in the 20th Century. And the other is Global Perspectives of Gender and Sexual Diversity. I will give you a sample lesson from the first course, Gender, Sexual Diversity in the 20th Century. And there'll be opportunities for you to share if you're willing to speak, or just to think on your own, you can. I just was going to share a few thoughts of my time, gender and sexual diversity out of the classroom. And then I wanted to hear your thoughts about your experience, whether you were a graduate of AFS or maybe from your own school experience. Lift up moments is a phrase we've been using recently. And if you wanted to lift any name up of a person or a moment or just something, a nice positive way to finish the evening. So that's the plan. So the course, as you can see, the first one is Gender, Sexual Diversity in the 20th Century. I've taught it in the second semester 3 times. 2016 to 17 was the first year. We alternate. I try to do semester electives about every 2 years. That way, juniors who can take the course, they can take it as a junior or a senior. I did it again in 18-19 and again 20 to 21. I'll teach the course next year in 22-23. The creation of the course, it was my desire to expand on the material that I was using in Eric Foner's Give Me Liberty that talked about Stonewall, but very little on both sides of the years of Stonewall. And I thought there'd be an opportunity to do more with that in the content of a course. I wanted to meet students where they were. Students wanted to have more LGBTQ voices in their curriculum. And I thought the chance to do a course like this would be terrific. I also know that it was being done in colleges, and I thought we could do this here at Abington Friends School. I also wanted to do an opportunity to do history with them through a different lens. And we've been able to do that as we get into the work of different historians. And always I felt incredibly supported by Abington Friends School. It is a process when you pitch a new course, goes through a department process, and it was never a question that this course could be offered at AFS. And so I've had wonderful support from department chairs and through upper school directors and Rich as well. The highlights of the course, there are some constants that you'll see in terms of material in this course, but the variations have been really wonderful. The first year I taught the course, 2 longtime faculty members, Debbie Stauffer and Carol Palmer, were retiring. Eric Marcus, who does the Making Gay History podcast, was a wonderful help with me in talking about history and more. And he spoke to my students about the creation of the podcast that he does and the process that he would do through the interviews. So with Carol and Debbie retiring, actually, we interviewed them and had a chance to hear their story. And then the students took we had the interviews transcribed, and then the students had to take the transcription and turn it into what could be a podcast. Obviously it wasn't, but they had that role of being an editor with, if it was done for a media moment, but also as kind of historians working with the first draft of history. 1819, as you can see, Stonewall was the 50th anniversary. So that was a huge one for the spring of that one. We did a lot more work with around Stonewall, the voices that, the stories that are told about Stonewall, how people remember Stonewall, the voices that should be included in Stonewall. We also watched the film called The Major Motion Picture Stonewall by Roland Emmerich. And I will say there are students who, when some of the climactic scene comes, viewed Roland Emmerich's presentation with an eye of skepticism, based on the work that they've done with the primary and secondary sources from the time period. And then last year was during COVID, and the pandemic. So it's been a matter, that was a very different entity. So just to give you a little sense of the handouts and packets and websites, you'll see that on the next few slides. I'm not going to read them line for line, but you can get a little sense of kind of what we do. The historians we talk about terms, because terms are an important part of the course. And we also talked about terms that the students are comfortable with. I will say, I've also, as the course has evolved, allowed students to bring even more and more of their own terms into the course, and it helps model that terms have changed throughout history. And that's been wonderful. You can see some of the other work that we've done. Some of them are by different historians you may or may not know. Some of them are available on YouTube, videos, documentaries. The last one, Screaming Queens documentary by Susan Stryker. She's a wonderful historian who was very helpful and willing to share with me. It's a powerful documentary if you have a chance to watch. Pre-Stonewall, that happened in California. These few you can see definitely came from about Stonewall, and some of the ones at the beginning were the variety of sources you can do when looking at Stonewall, as opposed to using just a single source about it. You'll see the All in the Family reference, and that's what we're going to be using tonight. And then finally, we would try to make our way through as close as possible to the present day. Not that the course ended with the Ellen episode, the puppy episode, but it was part of it. And there's a lot of wonderful history online as well to share. This year, I'm teaching a new course called Global Perspectives of Gender and Sexual Diversity. It's for the first time. So the hope is, you can imagine trying to teach world history, how expansive it is. I wanted to use something to ground the students in their work. I have two sections of them, 25 seniors and juniors. So we use a book called The Pink Line, and you'll be able to see that if you follow the link, you can learn more about it. But Mark Effiser is a South African journalist and has written extensively about South African queer history in South Africa. And the wonderful part too is Mark, I've reached out to him, and Mark is going to join my classes before spring vacation from South Africa to talk about the course. His argument is that there's a pink line, obviously metaphorical across the world. And it's right now we're just reading the chapters that kind of present his main ideas. And in the coming days, actually next week, we'll do a much more in-depth study. One class is going to be looking at India for about a month or so. The other class is going to be looking at Africa, looking at countries like Malawi, South Africa, Nigeria, Uganda, as they understand the sexual and gender diversity within these different regions. So we're really about to get deeper into that material. So those are the two courses in the history department. I can't speak to other courses in other departments, but it's been wonderful to have these electives so far, and they're going to continue. So I don't know if there's any questions before we get into a sample lesson or comments. I don't know, Lisa. If not, we'll continue.
There are no questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to just unmute themselves and ask any questions, feel free.
Are there other courses, Lisa, elsewhere in other departments?
I don't know the answer to that.
I can give it a shot. I mean, I don't.
A shot at that.
Yeah, I mean, the history department is constructed. We have 3 years of required history. History 1, the first year is history 1, which is 17th, or like 18th and 19th U.S. world history combined. History 2 is 19th and 20th century, but more 20th century U.S. and world. The semester electives are offered for juniors and seniors. So the history department really has a range of courses. This year, modern China, World War II, Latin American history. I taught a course called Politics and Protest in the first semester. So the history department is structured in a way that really permits electives that go deeper. The English department has some electives, but not one that's thematically around LGBTQ stories or voices at the moment. Now, I know the English department does tremendous work about the voices that they have, the authors they're reading, but I don't think they have a specific course, I would say. All right. So the lesson plans, as I said, there's been amazing work by historians, archivists, journalists, and more people who want to save history, share the history, tell the history, especially in the United States, of people who are LGBTQ. And One Archives is one of those organizations. Sorry, so I'm going to share. Oops, I should have just stopped the. There we go. So One Archives, as you can see here, One Archives Foundation does a tremendous amount of work out of California, and they have a large collection of lesson plans. And so what you'll see is adapted from that. As you know, educators are always looking for other ideas and then trying to figure out how it can work within the classroom. They're mainly designed for public schools, so they're very intentional about meeting state standards, especially California standards. This is the one that I've borrowed the ideas from and adapted from the ideas. So One Archives is terrific. Making Gay History, as I said, is the podcast. And you can see season 9 is focusing on the 1980s and the AIDS crisis. But they have 8 other seasons and bonus episodes you can watch, and incredible access to just icons of queer history in the United States. And so with those 2 ideas in mind, this is the lesson plan that I created. So let's see here. All right, so I'm going to try sharing. I'll maximize again. Oops, sorry. Wrong button. So you'll see here, this is the Mattachine Society, a photo. This is the citation from the One Archives. And the Daughters of Bilitis, this is the cover of the latter, one of the publications they produced. This is from October 1957. So what we would do with this lesson plan is I would have students read primary documents from the different homophile groups, organizations from the 1950s to try to understand who they were, the goal of the different organizations. It is in moments of time. So this is from a statement of purpose. It's a much longer one, but for the purpose of tonight, I just wanted to give you an excerpt as you can read it, okay? Eric Marcus's Making Gay History had podcasts of members of the Mattachine who founded the Mattachine, multiple members. And so we also had a chance to listen to those podcasts together and also on their own. And there's certain words, if you can think about any words or phrases that stand out to understand who the Mattachine were. The next is 2 paragraphs from the Daughters of Bilitis statement of purpose from 1955. I guess I should probably read it just in case there are people who, well, sorry. I think it's easier to give people space to read. So, Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If anyone prefers, they can put that in the chat. This is an excerpt from the latter from 1959. And you can see the Daughters of Bilitis, the emphasis was on women in the organization. I will say the first time we did this, students were a little apprehensive. As we did it multiple times over the course of a few weeks, they became more comfortable. Obviously, role playing has its limitations and it is not perfect. It's also the idea, there's some time quirkiness here, right? What you saw were from the 1950s. This episode that we watched from All in the Family season 1 is 1971. So when we ask students to do some role playing, there is always that question of time. So we would watch the whole episode. There's only about 25 minutes or so. As you know, sitcoms are, that much has not changed. I've excerpted out 2 clips to let you all see. So what I would task the students with doing is imagine you were a member of the Mattachine, imagine you remember the daughter of the Bilitis. How might you respond to what you see in the clip? I also would ask students, how would they respond as themselves? And people had different reactions. All right, let's see if this works. First one. Oh, sorry, one last point. So summary, Roger, a friend of Mike and Gloria's, stops by for a visit. Archie takes one look at him, labels him as gay due to what Archie considers effeminate behavior, even though Mike insists that he isn't. Mike soon makes a realization that one of Archie's drinking buddies, Steve, is actually a well-adjusted, sports-loving, straight-acting gay man. All right, so let's see if this works here. All right, so the question after watching the whole episode, we would ask the students, how might a member of blank respond to the clips from All in the Family? Mattachine would be first, or Daughters of Bilitis, either one, and then we would have a discussion from the 21st century. So if I go back to the initial slide with the primary document, imagine if you had it in front of you, is anyone willing to think, how might a member of the Mattachine respond? You can unmute your mic if you want to give it a shot. And since we wanted to give you a glimpse inside the classroom, this is what it's like sometimes. The other thing is being comfortable in silence. And so I will say in the evolution of my teaching, initially, I would probably fill the space. Being at Abington Friends School has reminded me to, and taught me really, to be comfortable in silence and to wait. It does also help students who are not the first to speak. So you have to be patient. Now, of course, being a teacher, I'd also possibly scaffold it a little and give some hints about lines or so. And if you go back to that first picture, maybe if you're a visual learner, let me see. Oops, sorry. What you notice about dress is the Mattachine dressed of the age, very conservative way. The goal of the Mattachine was really to help people understand that gay men were just like anyone else. The historians we've used have used the word assimilation and versus liberation. And the students, although they may not know that term, assimilation, liberation, they quickly pick up on the ideas and they can relate it to their own experiences in their own lives. But as you can see, the one line, they have a dignified and useful role to play in society. So with that prompt, right, how do you know that Steve is a dignified and plays a useful role in society and all of the family, right? Does anyone remember what kind of job he has?
He's a store owner.
Right, and he's a successful business owner, same street as the bar, right? Clearly gay men can be businessmen too. They can own shops. So a Mattachine member of the Mattachine Society might be pleased that All in the Family is portraying gay men as members of society. Okay. Now the Daughters of Bilitis, right? Anyone want to take a shot at that? So maybe how might a member of the Daughters of Bilitis respond? So the dates are similar. The Daughters of Bilitis is a contemporary of the Mattachine in the 50s. But obviously the gender difference and is a big piece. There were times that members of the Daughters of Bilitis and Mattachine thought maybe they could work together. But there's also a sense that an organization focusing on gay men will not ultimately be able to speak for the experiences of women. So students, I've had students in the past pick up on it and say, well, there's no lesbian in that episode. They might be pleased with the presentation of how Steve looks and is in the show, but there's not a woman's voice. Shifting to kind of in the present day and kind of how you respond to it. Students often had a variety of things to say about it, right? The character in the whole episode, as you can see 2 times, the clips that I shared with you, they pretty much pick up on that very fast, the idea that the characters are there for humor, right? Steve is there for humor. And when people discover Steve's sexuality, that's the humor, right? So the son, first you see Mike, kind of his reaction to it. And then obviously Archie is the main character, his reaction to it. And students they recognize that trope that's been used before. We're also able to talk about the evolution of queer characters on television and in film. And people understand that for decades, unfortunately, that was part of their exposure and their inclusion. All in the Family is a pretty stunning series by Norman Lear in the 1970s. He wanted to present Archie Bunker as somebody who could, as much as he represented people in the United States, he was also holding them up to American society as saying, this is people's thoughts. And there were people who obviously disagreed with it. So supposedly there were positive and negative reviews of this episode. Supposedly Richard Nixon said the most, Nixon asked why the writers made, quote, a good man like Archie Bunker look foolish at the story's end. So any other thoughts about this episode or this clip?
I just remember not enjoying the show at all because of the laughing.
Yeah.
It was so offensive to me. I couldn't ignore it. It just had such an impact on my, listening to it. Even if it wasn't meant to do that, it sure had that impact.
I understand. And it was one of the most popular TV shows in the 1970s.
Yep.
Yeah. But there's also that element of kind of revolutionary in Norman Lear, right? To bring Steve into programming and to show this, that's the hard part, right? Steve is presented, he's a person. However, the arc of that character, Steve doesn't appear again, right? So you can be critical of Norman Lear to say, all right, great, you introduced this one character, but you did it strictly for humor, and then the character is gone. I didn't know if anyone's memory was also the opening theme song, and oh my gosh, that's that one is usually in people's minds, ingrained in people's minds. Archie and Edith sitting at the piano. There. And as I said, with each passing year, the conversations in class about LGBTQ characters from television expands, and they're often able to compare to what they know in their lifetime. So just to give you a little sense of the second time I did this with students, we worked with different organizations, now more from the 1970s. So this is from the Gay Liberation Front. So I'm going to maximize this to allow you to see this. From 1970, right? So many years later. The party program platform is much larger. So again, this is just an excerpt for this evening. You'll probably pick up on the ways this has changed from the Mattachine Society primary document. One of the things the students do pick up on pretty quickly is the title of this organization, Gay Liberation Front. The word gay is part of the organization. Mattachine intentionally did not use the word gay in the naming of the organization. And even that episode that I shared with you, you can see none of the characters in the TV show use the word gay, right? They use euphemisms for it, and unfortunately at times slurs for the queer community, but no mention of the word gay in the Mattachine Society title. But here it is part of their title. And their view of how they should present themselves and be part of society was different. Okay, society was more an opportunity. Society should change, not that people, LGBT people should change to fit into society, but society should change to accept them. Society should change. Okay. The second is from a group called the Radical Lesbians. This is an excerpt from the Woman Identified Woman from 1970. So I'll give you a moment to read that. I'm not an English teacher, but I do love the opening line of what is a lesbian? A lesbian is the rage of all women condensed to the point of explosion. One of the wonderful parts about using primary documents is, as you can see, these are from the 1950s and also the 1970s, students opening their eyes so that if they think that occasionally you'll have a student who doesn't think that gender and sexuality was being discussed or covered or shared in a society. And these primary documents and these organizations show that it was. And we go further back in time to share that earlier in the 20th century. So again, this time you would imagine you were a member of the Radical Lesbians or the Gay Liberation Front. This is a second clip. This is a different episode. Season 8, episode 2, 1977. So All in the Family was on for many years. The episode is called Cousin Liz. So this is about a 5-minute clip. And hopefully this works with no problems. Oops, sorry, one last point. Archie and Edith attend the funeral of Edith's unmarried cousin Liz. Archie is obsessed with the possibility of Edith inheriting her money and silverware. Edith has to convince him why she won't be taking any of it after she has a revealing conversation with Liz's longtime roommate, Veronica. All right, let's see here.
We had a happy, wonderful life together. 25 marvelous years.
Oh, that's good. I wonder why she never mentioned it.
Well, people don't want to hear about those things. I mean, do you think that we would have been allowed to continue to work as school teachers?
Well, why not? I mean, that don't affect the brain, does it? Oh, Veronica, I wish you hadn't told me about this.
So do I.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I mean, it's so sad. It must have been terrible loving somebody and not being able to talk about it. You can have the tea set. I mean, it belongs to you. You're really her next of kin.
Oh, thank you, Edith. Thank you.
Oh, hey, Veronica, the guests seem to want to leave, so I tell them go ahead.
Oh.
Edith, you know something? You were right. That's very valuable. I turned it upside down. It says silver underneath there. You know what you are? You're a heiress, Edith. Huh? California is my
Oh, no, tea set, Archie.
Huh?
We ain't taking the tea set. I'm gonna let Veronica keep it. Why? Because she deserves it.
Beat it, you're Liz's closest living relation.
Veronica was even closer.
Sharing the rent ain't thicker than blood.
No, see, Veronica was closer to Cousin Liz than me or anybody else.
What the hell are you talking about, Veronica? Veronica ain't even family.
Well, it's like, to me, your family.
Same line family, you and me is married, Edie.
Well, Veronica and Cousin Liz was like married.
Are you telling me that Liz and Veronica was... that beautiful girl that I kissed? Liz was 11? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Hey, you must have got something wrong. You heard something wrong. You got mixed up some way in this conversation you was having in there with Veronica. Did you once hear the word queer?
You'll embarrass her.
Embarrass her? What about me? How do you think I feel knowing a deviation like that was running around on your side of the family? Now that I think of that girl, Liz.
Liz.
Same thing, same thing. No wonder when I kissed her, she wouldn't do more. You want me to fix her up with poor Stretch in heaven? She ain't even gonna go to heaven.
Veronica and Cousin Liz loved each other. Like you and me.
Don't say that. Like you and me. Oh, Lord, help me. You are so naive about these things. I mean, don't you understand that there's a hell of a difference, huh? In love and thanks between people who have the same and different.
See, that part don't have nothing to do with it.
That part has everything to do with it. That part. Turn around and march yourself in there, and you pick up your silver. Let's go home to New York.
No, I ain't gonna do that, Archie.
You mean you're gonna disobey your husband?
Yeah. He's closed.
That actually is a perfect time to stop before it goes into an advertisement. So if I may. All right, so again, I would ask the students to imagine if you were a member of the Gay Liberation Front or a radical lesbian to respond. Does anyone want to give it a shot? Give it a try. Let me ask, do they say the word gay in the episode? Do they say the word lesbian?
They say queer.
They do say queer. And that's where, it does provide an opportunity for me to share at the students and their understanding of the word queer, all being born in the 21st century. And as they like to tell me, I was born in the late 20th century. And I can share from my childhood how that word was used as a word of oppression and pain to students very easily. But he doesn't say the word lesbian, right? Which people would pick up on. And the Gay Liberation Front, obviously you can see using the word gay from the start. Some of the excerpt that you see here talked about internal oppression that people felt. And that was, you see in some other parts of the episode, not the excerpts that I shared with you, but students pretty quickly picked up on, they would be upset with this episode, especially this excerpt. They do not see the word lesbian used, they do not see gay being used, but they would notice, they would see the oppression that that Liz felt, right? Veronica felt, as she talks about her experience and her life. The radical lesbian piece is one that, that last clip, that last few seconds of the excerpt, you can see probably the key line there. A sexist society characterized by rigid sex roles and dominated by male supremacy. That moment where Edith stands up to Archie and says, no, I have made the decision. Students usually pick up on pretty fast and can see that that's something that maybe a member of the radical lesbians might pick up on and be pleased with Edith's role. And Edith, unfortunately, we don't have time to look at this show in its arc, but Edith's character does change over the years. And there are moments where she does assert herself. Any other thoughts about these two clips at all?
I have a thought. I can't undo my video, but
Please.
For me, this reminds me of my grandfather. And I remember his comments very similar discussions, similar vocabulary. I remember I was young, not always understanding what was happening on the show and not always understanding what he was saying, but knowing his body language and his vocalizing was very similar to Archie Bunker, and my grandmother was very similar to Edith. And I just know the feeling of it making me be uncomfortable, wonder, thinking like, what is happening? My parents injecting themselves in the conversation, he's not going to change, leave it alone, like all this stuff. So that last clip took me way back to the 70s, being 5, 7, 10 years old. And so much, how much has changed in the discussion, in the vocabulary. But my grandfather, people can say, it was of the time. It was of the time, but he was also not a very kind person. So those two things together, I just remember, thinking, what is going on? It doesn't feel good. And thinking he was Archie Bunker a lot. We always thought he was Archie Bunker, which is not a good thing to think your grandfather is. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I appreciate you sharing. And I do remind the students often that as we're talking about identities, people use gender and sexuality, two very important identifiers in students, in people. And so when we have these conversations, as much as we discuss it in an academic setting, we are still talking about people, very much so. Now, obviously, these are fictional characters, but they are, we do try to hold that at the center. And people share stories. I do remind them this is a history class, right? This is not a health class or something like that. So there will be limits to discussions that we have, but it is an important part. So thank you for sharing.
Well, Drew, if I could just jump in.
Please.
So, I watch the episodes, and the one thing that kind of, I think I'm piggybacking off of what Susan mentioned earlier. It just saddens me that, we're looking kind of hindsight, but how these were groundbreaking episodes. However, they were groundbreaking episodes for entertainment purposes. And so it just saddens me when I kind of reflect back at, when people in the 70s or 80s, whenever these were, how must individuals who were just trying to understand their sexuality and how must they have felt recognizing that this was on television. It was groundbreaking because you certainly didn't, have the language, the talk, the episodes, but it was only for entertainment. So it just, I am thankful that we have evolved, we've progressed, but clearly we still have a ways to go where individuals regardless of what their sexuality, are feeling comfortable in their own skin, and not being looked at as, outcasts, outsiders, or entertainment. So that just, as I sit here, I just like, wow, we actually watched that show years ago.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. And that idea of assimilation versus liberation, the students, as much as queer historians and others are talking about it from history in the 20th century, students understand that. And if I ask students, should AFS change to, do you need to change to be an AFS student, or should AFS change to accept you and to, so you can fully be yourself here? They understand that point. They get that idea, and they wrestle with that question themselves. How much should they try to change AFS versus how much should they just try to fit in? And then obviously we talk about this in the late 20th century. I will say, as you can see from on that slide, students, when I asked them, I was going to ask you all if you had a memory of a character, LGBT character from television many years ago, or do you have one from today? I will say students at AFS, that second bulleted point, they have just a wonderful assortment and just can go on and on. That conversation can go for many, many minutes and classes, as they know the variety of options for students. They understand, they seek out programs that have LGBTQ characters. Now they still pick up on when it's being used in a very two-dimensional way or for humor versus story arcs of characters that are much more fleshed out and are full and real, I would say. Does anyone remember a famous character, have a memory of a character, or when that first moment they heard or saw on TV? I did say no prior knowledge was necessary, so I certainly am not going to quiz anyone.
Wasn't there a character in MASH that was gay?
Well, I think that was Jamie Farr's character, if I remember.
Yes.
Right, but he was, and that would reinforce the idea that here's a show from the 70s, and I'm trying to remember his character and when it was there, but he was presented as dressing in
Women's clothing.
Gender's attire for the purpose of getting a Section 8, so he could be discharged. So again, that idea that somebody playing with their gender, right? I'm not sure if we've ever revealed that was a legitimate part of his identity, or really was just being done for comedic effect and for getting out, right? If somebody's dressing in a different gender's clothes, clearly they must be crazy and he should be allowed out of the army, right? So his character, I think, was really much there for humor. I have to say I was a huge MASH fan as a kid.
There was also characters on Soap.
Oh yeah, Billy Crystal,
which I thought was so funny, and I thought during quarantine, I'm like, come on, kids, this was the funniest show when we were growing up. This show is not funny by today's standards by any measure. I learned that very quickly.
And to get away from television, you also had Cabaret, which was all crazy.
We've had wonderful discussions there are, if you are interested in this at all, I'll say this. This is a book, I've used some excerpts from it. It's called Alternate Channels. And I included the link to it and also the Twitter account of the author, Stephen Capsuto. He does a wonderful job of tracing it. He also has an online presence on YouTube if you want to see clips. But there are examples out there. I will say even we do look at German sexologists in the early 20th century. I've shared with my students a early 20th century silent film on sexuality diversity in Germany, and it's available online. People are sharing this with people, which is wonderful. So I know we're close to 8 o'clock. I just want to say that in the classroom, there are discussions that are happening, as you can see from the history. The students in the upper school have something called the GSA, Gay Straight Alliance. In the years that I've been here, it's always changed based on student need. It's very student driven. So I can't speak to what they've their presence and what they've done, but they have meetings, usually bi-weekly, and have a chance to be in an affinity space with a faculty advisor. And the last question. As I was going to say, a little space to see if anyone wanted to share their own memories or experiences.
I want to speak. It's very interesting hearing some of your comments about the All in the Family episode, because as a gay man who was growing up at that time and was at AFS at that time, I mean, the episodes you showed were while I was a student at AFS. And even today, watching those episodes, I find very moving. I'm not in any way concerned that it's for comedic effect. Of course it's for comedic effect, it's a sitcom. But see, I can remember the incredible need to see anyone who in any way could be anything like me. And that's why I'm so moved that you're offering these courses and that the students are demanding it. And the students, it's not even a big deal for them that there's such courses. For me, it would have been life-changing. So I'm really struck that those of, I of course, I don't know other people's histories or personal stories, but the people are looking at those characters and offended by them. I'm grateful that they're there in any form.
Thank you for sharing. I think Steve West is next. Steve?
Hi everyone. So a couple of times the theme has come up where you know, a lot of these episodes are really offensive, and that's partly because people are laughing at the characters and the whatever's happening in the scene. But one of the things that strikes me about All in the Family is that while Archie is very offensive and some of the people around him are offensive in the way that they respond, the writers are extremely clever in the way that they introduce the topics and use humor to disarm people who would otherwise be really offended by the presence of any kind of reference to gay or lesbian people on TV, and you know, force them to view the situation. And they present both sides. You know, there's always a yin and a yang in the scene where either Edith or the son-in-law, I can't remember his name now. Meathead, yeah. And the tip-off for that is that in the end, Archie always looks like the fool. You know, and then Richard Nixon's comment is, you know, case in point, where he was upset because the scene, that one scene that they were talking about, made Archie look silly. And that's the point, is that the people subliminally absorb the fact that Archie is the fool, not the people who are presented as representations of gay or lesbian people. And so in that way, even though it's using humor, it's actually exceptionally clever, I think. So that's my
Thank
one.
you. Susan, did you want to speak, Susan?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to say I'm so glad that you were able to interview and use Carol and Debbie's experience at AFS. That was my time, and I was pretty significantly involved with them in a couple of important decisions, and they were just such wonderful role models. And I think for so many, it was such a wonderful way to have a strong presence of a gay couple in our school. It was just wonderful. I celebrate them.
They are missed. It's wonderful that the gymnasium court is the Chadwin Stauffer court.
Right.
I've seen them. They've appeared every now and then, but not as much. And they're certainly enjoying retirement as well, and their family.
Great.
I appreciate you sharing. You know, it does allow that's, you can see that it does, the 2 episodes and the 2 excerpts, you know, Veronica and Liz are in a long relationship, but the word marriage is not, that playing with that idea of marriage is, you can see Archie's reaction to it. We do then go into the 80s and 90s. We do talk about marriage equality, and I'll share with them the arc of history in terms of how marriage equality was viewed and fought for and won in the United States. We have had a chance to look at Evan Wolfson, who was a big part of the fight for marriage equality in the United States. Evan Wolfson, you can find it online. His when he was a Harvard Law School student, wrote essentially a thesis, this long paper to make the argument for marriage equality. And he'll say that, you know, the professors kind of laughed him off and said, this is not going to work. And he's like, no, it will. And Evan Wolfson dedicated his life to changing it, which reminds students that change takes time, but it starts somewhere. And Evan Wolfson obviously there were many others besides Evan Wolfson who helped win marriage equality in the United States. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I do, as I said, mindful of time here. We finish with lift up moments. I certainly want to lift up you all for coming tonight and spending time with us. This is a special community. I feel fortunate to be with the students. I know that I have a few moments in their lives with them. And for some of the families who've come through here, it's nice to see their names again up here, because there's always those moments, especially when you have seniors, where it's the last one of a child. And we have a few of those this year, where those families their children will graduate, but it's nice to see families return in different ways. So I just want to provide space for anyone else to lift anything up. And it doesn't have to be related to what you've learned or anything else. We all need some of these positive moments.
I'm just appreciative. I need to learn, continue to learn, appreciate the information and learning. Even when you think you've got it right, there's so much more to learn. And so there's so much more to learn. So I appreciate very much the information and the time. And what my child will be learning, so he can be the next generation lifting this up to a place where it should, where it can be. I think hopefully they'll save us all.
Yeah, and Drew, I just want to say thank you for this evening, as well as for everything that you've done in teaching our kids and my daughter, who's done a lot of the class that you had last semester, and there was a gender and diversity or LGBTQ club as well. That I think are you part of that as well? Are you the
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. You were at one point?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for all of that.
Of course. Thank you. I did include my email address. Please do reach out. As I said at the beginning, if you know someone who might be a wonderful guest speaker to join my class, it's happened many times over the year. I will say during Zoom, it happened even more so. People were even more extending their help. So please reach out. If you want to talk about any more ideas, if you want any of these resources, if you want more links in a different way or any books, I'd be happy to share that with you all, and feedback as well. The course, I've been able to do it because I've had a chance to hear from different people and some reflections. So I do know it's 8:06. I appreciate everything. I hope you stay warm, have a wonderful new year, stay safe. Lisa, any other thoughts?
No, I just wanted to lift up that I'm very appreciative of Zoom because it is bringing together our alumni community in ways that we haven't been able to do on a regular basis. So it's just great to see people joining us for these sessions, and we hope that you'll come back to campus as well. But this is just a great way to share our community with each other. So thank you for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. I'll stick around in case there's any questions, just like we do in class. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. I feel very privileged. I finally got to be in one of your classes. So I can't wait to tell my daughters. Thank you for doing this.
You had no homework.
I know. I can't wait to tell them that too. See that? But really, thank you so much. This was great.
Tell him I said hello and tell him to reach
I
out. and
will.
say hi. Especially,
I will.
my wife is a lawyer and she's always, depending on what kind of law she's interested in. Yeah, so.
I will definitely tell Rachel. Rachel absolutely adored you. Did you ever hear that story when well, actually, you wouldn't have known this. There was a Princeton reunion and Rachel was standing with her friends and she saw you go by and she screamed, "There's Drew Benfer." And all of her friends started screaming, "There's Drew Benfer." And then somebody said, "Who's Drew Benfer?" And Rachel said, "He was my history teacher." But there was a lot of people saying, "There's Drew Benfer," which I thought was great. When
Yeah, the reunions are quite an experience, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thanks. So, here's
Drew,
goodbye.
this is Becky Dries Coyne. I'm a alum from the class of '89.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say thank you. I only spent my last 2 years of high school at Abington Friends as a junior and senior. And Debbie and Carol were probably my introduction to a lesbian couple. And for a long time in my experience, I just had not had that opportunity to know other, people in the LGBTQ community. And so I'm so thankful that you're doing this course for students there today. And also particularly I'm on tonight because I have a 13-year-old. I live in Boston, the Boston area. And my 13-year-old is non-binary. And so I'm as we started looking for high schools for them up here in the Boston area, the one main focus was on their awareness of gender and sexuality, sort of, diversity and sort of opportunities for all gender housing and just the progressiveness of certain schools. And so it's just wonderful to hear that AFS is offering courses, at least. I mean, at this point we've been looking at residential at boarding schools for that opportunity up here. But I thank you, because I think that at the high school level, it's just really important, not only that students have affinity spaces, but also that there's curricular development and opportunities for all students to kind of learn to share in this learning.
Thank you for sharing that. And I wish the best for your child, and I'm sure you will. I know there's a wonderful collection of schools in Massachusetts. Students also are very aware right now in the 2022 of states and that are passing laws to restrict what is taught in a classroom. Students have shared in the classroom now, they're like, my public school, this class doesn't exist. This just doesn't exist. And so, yeah, I feel again, I've always felt very fortunate to be here, but with the creation of the course and having the support to do it, has been terrific. So.
Super. Well, thank you so much.
It's warm up there, Becky. It's still winter, right?
We got a little bit of snow on the ground, but it's not too bad. I live in Scituate. Scituate's the town that always hits the national news for all of the flooding and the storms, the waves that crash around the coast just south of Boston. So we're surviving.
Good.
Thanks again. Good night.
Night. Thank you, Peter, for sharing as well.
You're welcome.
It was, yeah. The school has changed. The nice part I was going to share is that students their voices, they find their voices, and they want, that question of assimilation liberation is there for students, and students, AFS has changed in the 17 years that I've been here, and it will continue. It will continue to change. So. Anything else? I think we're all set. Any other comments, thoughts, closings?
Thank you.
My pleasure. So one of the things we say in the upper school often is go well and students respond, stay well, but certainly go well. So have a great night, Lisa. You're the host. You want to leave the meeting?
Yes. Okay.
I'm the only one left, so good. Good night.
Thanks for joining us, Peter.
Thanks.
Delighted. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Drew.
Night. Bye.